Allah tells us that we're stewards of this earth. As Muslims, we have a responsibility towards Allah in regards to His creation. On this podcast, I'll talk to Muslim sustainability leaders worldwide. We'll discuss our challenges, emerging solutions, and how we can all make a difference. My name is Ilyas, and I've been working on sustainability for over 10 years. I'm grateful that you have joined us on this journey as we explore what it means to be a steward on Earth. Today, my guest is Tariq Ramadan. He's an academic, emeritus professor, philosopher, and writer who has written extensively on Islam, theology, and contemporary issues. For years, he has called for Muslims to engage in more critical self reflection. In the light of the environmental crisis, I think this is a topic we will further dive into and explore in our conversation. Assalamu alaikum, dear professor.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for
It's
inviting
a,
me.
it's, it's a great pleasure. Prophet, do you have a favorite part of nature to be in? Are you a mountain guy or a forest man? What's the place you love?
The desert. The desert is the place where I can find the best way for me to contemplate and to come back to God and to the meaning of life. But everywhere, but really the best one for me is really the
The
desert.
desert. Why the desert? Wow, that's an interesting one.
Because of the very meaning of this, infinite space, the relationship you have with time as well. And there is something which has to do with loneliness and at the same time, you being part of nature and being part of the
Mm,
cosmos. So um, I spent weeks and very long time, even with the, you know, tribes in the desert where I was happy
SubhanAllah.
that
Eh,
I was at peace at
Really?
least.
Okay. Any plans to go back to a desert?
Inshallah, inshallah, if there is time and if Allah, God allows me to go there, of course, I would like to renew the
Inshallah.
experience.
Inshallah. Okay.
Inshallah.
That's an interesting. You've written about social justice, environmental issues for years. I think one of the earlier texts I found was out of 2008. What were you hoping to achieve by that, by writing on social justice, environmentalism from an Islamic perspective?
In fact, my first text about this were a text I wrote when I was a young teacher in the 80s. So I started being involved in ecology, and one of my close mentor at that time was someone who was known as René Dumont in French-speaking uh, countries, and he was, in fact, a candidate for the French election. He's the one who took a glass of water in '74 and said, "I'm drinking this in front of you, before you, thinking that maybe one day and very soon it's going to be a rare resource." He said this in '74, and people were laughing, say, "Okay, look, this is a crazy guy." And I was very close to him. And in fact, he's one of these thinkers at that time when I was young, who helped me a lot understanding the very meaning of uh, stewardship, of being respectful towards nature and respectful towards meaning, being respectful towards God. And the very essence of this understanding of Al Khilafah uh, um, was something that it's strange because in my spiritual journey, I'm coming from a very traditional Muslim family. My grandfather was involved, my father, my mother, the whole family was involved. And it took me sometimes a specific journey to come back to the
Mm,
teachings of my parents. And one of these journeys was really to go and to deal with people who are talking about how do you respect nature, how do you respect human beings, and at the same times, this very old anarchists say coming from uh, um, someone who was really against even the very understanding of capitalism, Proudhon, who was saying the private property is to steal, is stealing. And he was saying we only are using the world which is not
mm,
ours. And then brought me to the Native Americans saying, the lands don't belong to us. We belong to the lands. So look, this rang a bell, in my mind. Say, okay, I think that ringing a bell. Sorry, this also was something which was important for me in my coming back to Islam and saying, at the end of the day, if you understand Islam, you understand that there is a universal message here shared by so many other traditions, and bringing us back to you are not the owner of the world. And if you want to show respect to the owner, to the creator, to your educator, you have to behave with the world. And then I started looking at hadith and prophetic traditions, helping us to understand this. And when I wrote the book in 2006 about Sirah, the biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him, I just came back to say, okay, look, there is a chapter here of he is dealing with nature, with water, with trees, with uh, time and space and natural resources. That if you don't get this, you don't get the very essence of his
mm.
teaching.
Yeah. So it's, in a way, uh, it's integrated within the core beliefs of Islam, right? Part of being a
Yeah.
Muslim is part of understanding creation and
Yeah.
respecting creation.
Yes, I would agree with this, but I would uh, start from the other way around. In my understanding, and this is the problem I have with many Muslims, practicing Muslims, and people who are very strict with the rules. I say, it's true. We have to be very strict with the rules. There is something called halal. It's the permissible, and haram. It's the prohibited. Yes. And we have to be clear with this. And we have something which is based on al-aqidah, which is our creed and the way we deal with God and the way we deal with our rituals. All this is true. But if you start with this and you don't get the sense that you have to start with the cosmology, I started 3 years ago a research center called Shifa, is the quest for
Mm,
balance. And the sea of Shifa is cosmology, the cosmos, that you have to understand that the way, which is the very meaning of Sharia, the very meaning of Sharia is the way towards the source, the water source. So the Sharia, it's a space, it's a way, but the way is somewhere. And it's the cosmos. And the cosmos, you have to understand that you have to understand your place within the cosmos, and your place within the cosmos is to respect the creator of the cosmos, and humility means know your place, respect the environment, and you are not at the center. The center is God. You are an element among the elements. And if you don't get this, you don't understand the very meaning of Surah Al-Rahman, which is the most merciful. Is the verse where it is said, وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. أَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ, you have to set the balance with equity. And the balance with equity is how you get this humility to know where you are and within which cosmos you are living. And the way you deal with the cosmos is the way you deal with yourself, is the way you respect God.
yeah. So that how how should a Muslim understand that as part of his daily faith? Because we're living now in a time where I think this relationship with nature has, or the relationship with the cosmos or Khalqullah has almost become a luxury rather than a core part of our belief, right? Especially for Muslims in the West. I mean, in our economic system, we're very far from the resources or from the source or from, especially now, from the injustices. So how should we reflect on that and practice that within our daily faith?
You know, we need to get this in a very deep way. You know, the devil is at work. And we know that there is something which is within the world that could be very bad and negative. The young people would say vibes. And I would say this negative forces that are at work in the world. And what we know is there are two ways. There is the ways bringing us back to God, and there is a ways where we are going to lose the path and to be completely lost in the world as to the meaning of life, as to God, and as even our respect towards the creation. Now, the negative forces could play on the positive forces by distracting them from the essential. What is happening in the West? And this is where Western Muslims don't get it. They don't understand the role they should play in the West. I'm sorry, I'm not here to be respected by the West. I should be a witness of this stewardship. What does it mean? And in which way can I play a positive role in the West? By reminding the people of the very meaning of life. While at the same time, I have people who are day in, day out, trying to put me in a position where I have to defend the details, the superficial things in your way you dress. I'm not saying it's nothing. I'm saying if you compare them to the essence of your faith, they are, I would say, maybe not the details, but the more visible things, the way you dress, the way you pray, your masks and things like this. Because what disturbs them is your visibility out of their physical eyes. While we have to talk to the invisible eyes, which is the heart. And while I understand this, I have to, it's a decision. It's a spiritual decision not to go astray, responding to the visible troubles, but to be the witness of the invisible gift. And the invisible gift is I'm in the West. And in the West, I should, yes, be faithful to the principles of Islam when it comes to al-aqidah and, as we said, the ibadat, praying, fasting. But at the same time, in this capitalistic order, in this way of dealing with the world, which is very pragmatic and so disrespectful, it's the good is what is useful and pragmatically useful. What we are saying is not this. The good is to be kind, is this generosity, is this respect towards the order. And we have to understand that we have a mission. If God brought us in the West, is not to end up being accepted, so much accepted that the West that we are invisible and that we bring nothing. It's to remind the people of the very essence of what it means to be with God. And the very essence of what it means to be with God is be careful with the natural resource. Because you are going to be questioned about them. Even if you are preparing yourself to pray, the water that you are using for the ablution, you should not waste it. So if you should not waste the water of your ablution, it means that you have to be careful with everything. So instead of being obsessed with the details where you put your hand when you pray, and you are so neglectful about the way you use the natural resources, and you have no respect towards species and towards animals and towards the creation as such, I think that you take the details for the essential and forget the essential and are going astray with the details. And this is exactly what they want you to do. The people who don't like the truth want you to forget the essence of the truth, to dispute about the details of the truth. And you end up doing this, thinking, yes, I am a fighter for Islam. Yes, but you are not a witness for the truth. You are just fighting against and not promoting something for the very essence of life. And I think that we have to put ecology, we have to understand that We are ecologists, not because the world is going to be destroyed, but by principle. These are principles before the catastrophes. It's not, we're not coming to it because of the catastrophe, because the global warming and because there are floods here and fire there. This are the consequences of our craziness and el-ghafla, which means the lack of awareness when it comes to the relationship with God. And I would say that as and you know, I'm talking to you and we are talking as Muslims here, but this is something that we are sharing with Christians and Jews and Hindus and Buddhists and Native American, First Native Canadian, and you know, these are people who are like us, some of them within their own traditions, feeling a sense of loneliness because they have the feeling that their fellow brothers and sisters in their own tradition don't get it.
Mhm. Yeah, subhanAllah. Yeah, so there is it, are you saying in the way, and I don't want to twist your words, but that we're not really system thinkers, recognizing that, that we're part of very large processes with a start and an end, and that if we're not understanding the start and the end, right? The water we use comes from somewhere, goes somewhere. We'll be here long after we're gone, and in that way, everything we either use or abuse is part of this ecological system, but that we've become focused on a very small part of that system instead of understanding, as an ecologist would, understanding the broader system that we're part of and the broader systems that we're part of.
Yes, that's exactly it. I think that this is the way we have to look. And as I was saying, that there is a creation, and the world as it is today is bringing us to the very essence of the message that lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fil ard, to God belongs the heavens and the earth, and that you have to get to this, to look at the world and say, okay, instead of repeating as they are doing, oh, the earth is becoming small, and that's it because of communication, because of speed, and that's fine, but that's not the point. The point is that within this earth, we are destroying the very meaning of our presence. And once again, faith, el-iman, it's a
Mm,
trust. إن عرضنا الأمانة, we gave the trust, and the trust of faith is you have to deal with it with caution, and you have to respect, because all elements, and this is a metaphor telling us it's a great responsibility. But the great responsibility is understand that the way you respect a tree is another way of praying.
mm,
You have to pray 5 times a day to remember the way you have to pray, by respecting a tree, by respecting birds, by respecting nature and water. So it's a reminder to carry on praying. It's not, I pray and I forget everything. This is a capitalistic way of
mm,
praying. If it's only about 5 times, and this is a quantity, the quality of your prayer is irradiating the world with its light, and it's the way we have to get this. And you know, we are in the West today, and this is unfortunately the imperialist cultural way the West is dealing with the world, is that it's out of quantity and pragmatism and utilitarianism. And this is the way I understand it, I'm resistant to this order, not only as a Muslim, but of course as a Muslim with other human beings coming from other spiritualities. And this is the universality I find in Islam, that we are sharing the essential. And the essential is this respect towards nature, and the respect towards the environment, understanding that we are not the
mm,
center. We have the greatest responsibility, but we are not the center of the world. The center is God, and we have to come back to him, meaning to come back to ourselves. And this is why all what we are, I would like that. I'm writing and finishing writing now a book called The Manifesto for an Islamic Theology of
mm,
Liberation. And it seems that we need an ecology of the self before having an ecology of the world. It's the way we have to respect all the
Think,
dimensions within
yeah.
us, because we have the different dimensions. And this intimate ecology is come back to this balance within you, because this is the only way you are going to deal with the world. And all, this discussion that we have with Muslims, you have to educate yourself first and then you will change the world. That's not the way. You educate yourself by changing the
Yeah.
world, and you change the world better because you are. So it's an ongoing process, and it's exactly this, from the center to the periphery, from the periphery to the center, which is exactly the very meaning. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We start with God, we go ahead with the world, we come back to ourselves, and we come back to God, to the fitra that we have, which is this natural aspiration towards God that is part of our consciousness, that our part of our being. And this is where we need to reconcile the West with
Mm.
metaphysics, with this understanding of the global, and not ending up with uh, very, very superficial understanding of our religion. And I would say that we have very superficial Muslims and very deep Christians, very deep Native Americans, very deep Jews, very deep Buddhists. And I would say that it would be good for us to have the essential discussion with people from different traditions, helping our own brothers and
Mm.
sisters in Islam to get the right message. Because the true resistance is about this. The true resistance is not only a superficial moral resistance, it's a deep ecological, metaphysical, and spiritual resistance.
Yeah.
Wallah.
Yeah. I think what I'm missing at the I think at the core of the whole debate around the climate crisis and the environmental crisis is that we are discussing how we want to reshape our economic system. We're discussing how we want to reshape the balance between use and abuse of resources, right? A circular economy or a donut economy.
Mm.
But I think something we're not really doing as much is a discussion about our morals and what ethics we want at the heart of our society, right? To move from a society of exploitation to a society of cultivation, which I think is what, as Muslims, we should be promoting, right? To always cultivate, to leave the earth better than we found it, to because I think a good steward is not just about maintaining, but about improving for future generations, right? Especially if you look at it from a sadaqah jariyah perspective. There's a lot of
Mm.
benefit both in the here and the after in
Mm.
that. What what are what are some of those basic morals that we should be promoting and etiquettes that we should be that we should be advocating for in building that better world here in our
Yes.
surroundings?
I think you said something very important here, which is if we come to ecology and questioning the ecological balance and respecting nature and the world. If we come to this, because we are facing, catastrophes, and we deal with the disorder that we brought to the world, the only way we are going to think about this is, okay, let us reform the system that provoked
Mm,
this. So this is where you have people regulating capitalism or saying we come with an Islamic economic system. And when you think about the Islamic economic system, it's just avoid interest, but try to get the same interest and profit as the others. So avoid interest, but with the same profit, which is the same mentality.
mm,
And say, okay, if we come to this, it's not going to work. This is why we have to come to it through the way you propose here, which is, let us think about us, talk about the higher objective, al
mm,
maqasid. What are the maqasid? What are the higher goal, the higher objective, or the higher objective that we want to achieve here when it comes to this? So it's not about questioning the system and trying to reform the system, is to question the system in the light of the goals and the objectives. So it's the other way around, by saying, okay, look, what do we want to achieve and what do we have to achieve? Because this is the way our religion is teaching us to behave in the world. So there is coming from the school of the Maqasid, which is known throughout the Islamic history, is, oh, we have five main objectives: is to protect the religion, is to protect the person or the human being, and nafs or a deen, and we have the five of them. And in the book Radical Reform, I question this five by saying it's too wide, and it's so wide that at the end of the day, you have nothing to deal with when it comes to dealing with the world in a very respective way. When it comes to ecology, okay, what are we going to say and say to protect deen, to protect your religion, to protect the nafs, to protect justice? Okay, what does it mean justice when it comes to the world? How am I going to be just with the world, which is essential in Islam? So I think that the specialists working in the field uh, have to work with the Muslim scholars to say, okay, what are the main goals here that we want to achieve in the light of the Quran and the revelation in the Islamic tradition, but also knowing what are the challenges sciences and technology are facing today, which is not done. We have a very, generous but not very practical agenda. I say, okay, yes, Muslims, we and this is what we have with some scholars. We were the first to say it. Okay, that's fine, but we are not the
Mm.
last, and we are not providing the world with anything. So I would say here that we have first to deal with this notion that to respect the natural order, which means to respect God's creation. This is something which is important. Now, in every specific field, when it comes to the way we have to deal with justice, that there is something which is important. We have one world and one humanity, and the resources should be shared. So the point that now, in the name of this power balance and power struggle and the economic system, bringing resources from African countries and dilapidating them in the West and not respecting, and then coming to this injustice as to the natural resources, ending up with an economic justice by saying, you migrants, you have to stay at home. So we bring your resources, but we don't want the human being. We have to connect all
Mm.
this because ecology has to do with also, not only natural justice, but social justice. If we want the people to remain what they are and to be happy where they are, we have to respect the natural resources and to help them to deal with them in the right way, which is not dilapidating, not wasting resources, and try to deal with something which is up to your needs, not only to your
Mm.
greeds and so this is something which is an understanding of the world, which is the starting point of the Islamic teachings, where you are, and with the notion we spoke about, the zakat, for example, the right of the poor, it's always local. So your global, what Sonny came as, a motto, thing globally and act locally, is something which is part of the Islamic
Mm.
tradition. You have to act locally. So you say, La ilaha illallah is global, but zakat is
Mm.
local. You have to pay the zakat to the people around you. So we need to come with something which is, if you want to start something which is ecological resistance at your level, in your neighborhood, you have to start. And this means the way you respect water, the way you respect food, the way you respect agriculture. All this has to be done in a way which you reconnect with the natural order of the world, meaning respect time and respect space. I am saying this because what we are doing now in the name of this global economy, we take, some fruits from the other way, other part of the world, and we bring them for in the West to have them all the whole year. Why are we doing this? Why are not respecting seasons and all this? So I would
Mm.
say that this is part of something which has to do with al-maqasid in the field of ecology, in the field of the way we deal with nature, and the cosmos as a whole, should be based with priorities. That so there is under the notion of al-maslaha, which is the public and the human interest, is how do we show and pay justice to the cosmos and to nature, and then we come with specifics. And it's from these objectives that you need then to have a kind of a local plan for the
Mhm.
people to respect nature. Uh, because we have here to be very practical. My point here is I really I'm scared of this very generous thoughts coming from Muslims, but at the end of the day, in their daily life, there is no change. It has no impact because they don't do anything. So I would prefer what I always call on the social ground as a global movement of local initiatives. But this global movement should be local initiative. So start with yourself, because this is the way. I remember a young guy in Indonesia. He was not a scholar, but he said he has three S's. And the first was start with
Mhm.
yourself. Start small and start with yourself. And I think that this is exactly what the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us from the very beginning. So yes, there are global maqasid, higher objectives, but there are objectives that you can start implementing, and with a sense of hierarchy, you can start with this as something which is part of your life, and understand this is part of being a practicing Muslim. It's not on the margin, it's not secondary, it's part of, if I am a practicing Muslim, I have to care about all these dimensions in my
Yeah.
life.
So are you to make it perhaps too practical, but I'm curious about what you think. So are you advocating for more self-sufficient local communities? Because right now we've become, I think the average supply chain of the average European is extremely global, right? My bananas come from this place, my clothing comes from that place, and like the completely, uh, I think local resilient communities are the weirdos living off the grid, right? Who make a decision
Mm,
to go off the grid, have farm their own foods, farm their own because they've decided to opt out of a system that is so based upon the cheapest stuff for the cheapest price.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I do want my, like you said, I want my passion fruit every day of the year, from
Mm.
wherever it comes. So is that the most concrete step that Muslims should try to take to think in a more local way in
I
their impact?
Yes, I would advocate
Mm,
that. I would say that to start with, even your way of life, even living in the West, try in your life, because to reconnect with nature and with the cycles and with the seasons and with the fruits coming, and this is something which is, I would suggest that as a Muslim, one of the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges that we have um, in the West is really this reconnection with the natural order, with cosmology. And we forget about it in the way we buy, in the way we eat, and in the way we are part of this consumer society. And I would say, yes, it's, as you know, a, a dhikr, to remember God, remembrance, is also coming out of some of the things that you put in your life to help you to remember and to remind yourself of the very essence of life. So the way you deal with the cycles, and we have it in with Ramadan. So if Ramadan is a journey through the year, because every year it's 10 days or 12 days before. It means that you are going through all the seasons. If you are in the West, this has to be, it's even more the case in the South. But I think that to reconnect with the seasons, we have this feeling in the way we deal with the sun, because during summer it's a very long day, during winter is a short one. But why are we disconnecting ourselves from the way we eat? And I think that the local here, understanding what is brought to you, but the local agriculture, local production, local realities, is something that it's also it's better. And second is also a way where you understand you do your
Mm.
part in the whole concert of life. Because at the end, if you don't do this, you can, uh, um, you know, criticize and talk against injustices. But if you are not aware of this, it might be that you are a link or an instrument of an unjust system by the way you eat and by the way you drink. So this awareness, I think, in your daily life, it's could be a good way of resisting.
Yeah. But that does make your daily life harder, right? It does increase the amount of thought you have to put within your daily life. It's very easy for me to just buy without thinking. Is that
Yeah,
why would I want that increased hardship within my life of buying locally, of thinking about where my clothes come from, where my food comes from, where the stuff in my house comes from.
yeah, I think that's a fair point. But when I started talking like this few years ago, this was, as I told you before, even it was in the 90s, the 80s, 90s. I had people saying, "No, we can't do that. It's not going to be easy on us because you can't. If you have to avoid what is coming from the transnational corporation and all the products that they are, and if you have to choose your food, and it's going to be too. That's not the way Allah is telling us. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Yassiru wa la tu'assiru, make things easy, not difficult." That's
Mm,
fine. That's fine. And I understand that you cannot do this. And in myself, I cannot do it for everything. But in your life, if you start having one, two, three, four things that you are avoiding because you understand that they are part of something that you are resisting, it helps you to remember. And that's the very point of all this is a dhikr, is to remember that you have to avoid and you have to promote the good. Of course, you can't, and especially in our life and in the West, it's very difficult. Now, why should I add this hardship in the way I buy, in the way I eat? Because this is the very meaning. Justice is not an easy path. El-ghafla, it's an easy path. El-ghafla meaning an awareness that you just go ahead and you don't think about the very meaning of life. But within this, to try to find the easiest way is fine. But in the name of easiness, to forget everything and to have no path, no way, no morals, no limits, and and to confuse between easiness and forgetfulness, that's not the way. No, no, no. Dhikr means that there are limits, and you have to come to few things. So even in the way you eat and in the way you drink and in the way you buy, it's important that buying is a spiritual act. Buying is a spiritual act as much as giving money is zakat. We said it's is zakat is it's something which is as an act of charity. No, zakat, it's a social, it's a purifying social tax, purifying. So it's like prayer. As much as you purify your heart with praying, you purify your money with giving this money. So there is a spiritual act in buying even.
mm,
And it's not always easy. And we were not taught that it's going to be easy, because to be aware, it's not the easy way of dealing with life. So, yes, we have to find the easiest way, but not a way where there is no
mm.
consciousness.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to start with, right? To think about making conscious purchases every time, and think about how you can make that a ibadah, because the potential in there is infinite, right? You can always increase your consciousness and ibadah in the way you act, in the way you purchase. And what would you then say to someone who says, but it's about my intentions? إنما الأعمال بالنية, and it's about my intention. And my intention is not to do harm, but to feed my family, and this is the cheaper food. Because those are some of the arguments I'm having, where the fair food is more expensive, or the more wholesome foods are more expensive, so it is an increased struggle. um and that is, I think, something that is still a debate within the Muslim community, where we it seems like we are prioritizing our current needs over the pride in achieving those needs, or addressing those needs. And it's I'm struggling with that still.
Yeah. And yes, and this is understandable, but it's also understandable why the people are saying this. Because yes, it's the reality of our daily life in the West, where, but not only in the West, by the way. Now it's everywhere
Yeah.
in the Muslim majority countries. You find this everywhere. So having said that, now we need to, and this is something which is important when you are a scholar. You can't deal with people by always reminding them of the ideals. We have to come to the real life, because the way لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة, there is a beautiful example in the example of the messenger, peace be upon him, is that he started with this. And this is the very meaning, يسروا ولا تعسروا, meaning make things easy for people and then educate them to go somewhere. So when they are telling you this, they are just bringing to you a sense of hardship, a sense of it's too difficult. We can't do that, because it's the problem is to work on three different things. The first is the awareness, because the awareness, which is um, when it comes to faith, it comes to a taqwa, which is this reverential consciousness. Taqwa is very often translated by piety. And I say, no, it's reverential consciousness, meaning reverential, that you pay respect to God, and at the same time, we have this consciousness, it's taqwa. Well, and in your spiritual journey, even in pilgrimage, uh, it's you have to take your provision, and the best provision is a
Mm.
taqwa. So this is a verse of the Quran, which is وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. The best provision for your journey. And your life is a pilgrimage, and there is this small pilgrimage within the pilgrimage of your life, and the best provision is this reverential consciousness. This reverential consciousness is the first condition. The second, with this taqwa, which is the very understanding of what we need when we start, is not only to have the intention to deal with this consciousness, is the intentions connected to the action. So yes, in the a'malu bin niyat, it's important, but you're not going to come to God saying, I had the
Mm.
intention. I had intention. No, what have you
Mm.
done with your health, with your body, with your money, with your neighbors, with the world, with the cosmos? What have you done? So the intention is the state of your heart. The action is the translation of this state into the world. So a Muslim is always a visible
Mm.
Muslim, not because he's referring or she's referring to her or his intentions, but to the action, the behavior, and what you said, the ethics, the ethical
Mm.
behavior. And the last is a point which is important: do your best. So which is exactly as the mastata'tum ilayhi sabila. It's do as much as you can to achieve the pilgrimage. Okay, so do the best you can to achieve the pilgrimage of your life. So you do your
Mm.
best. لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. You're not going to bear the burden of somebody else. And plus, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. You're not going to be asked for more than what you can bear. So that's the point. So do your best. So this first condition is this reverential
Yeah.
consciousness. The second is the consistency between your intention and your action. And third, do your
Mm.
best. Having said this, in the life, it's okay. Okay, now We start with you where you are and say, okay, you can't change everything. But you remember the Native American when they were talking about the hummingbird saying, I did my part, which is I dropped water on fire. It's not going to stop fire in the forest, but I did my part. As a Muslim, this is exactly the Native American with this story, legend of the hummingbird was saying exactly what we are saying as Muslims. Do part. And only this, do your part. So don't tell me every time I'm questioning you, oh, I had the intention. I should, and we as your brothers and sisters in humanity, we have to see something out of you because you are on earth as a witness. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. If you are not a witness, you are not going to be a witness out of your intention. It has to be visible with your actions. So do your best with this and try to decide out of all the things that you have to choose, you have some, and you need to have some priorities. What comes first? Of course, praying and then all what we said, al-ibadat and al-aqidah, al-ibadat, yes. And then the way you deal with the products, the way you deal with what you eat, the way you deal with what you drink, all these things are going to be also important. But the way you have to deal with them has to do with actions. And plus, as it is said in the Quran, and as we understand, you are not going to be asked to do more than what that one you can do, but what you can do, do it. And this is the way to make things easy for the people. Is that, which is, by the way, it's not so easy because I take the verse in the other way around saying, yes, you are not asked to do more than what you can, but what you can, you have to. So it's easy. You have you are the only one knowing what you can do and what you can't. And at the end of the day, this is what we have and the way we have to behave, understanding that we have a responsibility towards humanity. And this is also something which is a heavy responsibility, and especially in these times.
Yeah. And I think so there's a lot of the climate crisis brings with it a lot of fear, right? People have become fearful of the future and they've become very pessimistic about the future because we're in a 1.5 or 2 degree scenario. These are the predictions by the climate scientists, and most of those um, prognoses are very negative. And if you're to believe then that narrative, and you look at the current scientific narrative, that is extremely negative. It's going to be a horrible time, and as a result, I think there is a high need for perhaps not a more positive, but in a way perhaps a more positive view of the future, um, because as a result of that fear, people are becoming people are not acting in the here and now because they're like, well, we've gone too far. We've destroyed the earth. There's nothing that we can do anymore. What is the relationship Muslims have with the future? Right? How should we look at that future, and what should that do for where we are now? Because, and I'm asking this because I'm also noticing that there are a lot of climate skeptics between Muslims, right? I think a lot of Muslims are climate skeptic because they are like, yeah, but I don't believe in this view of the future because I believe in Yawm al-Qiyamah and I believe that the world will end, so it doesn't matter what happens. It's a little bit of a
Mm.
complicated question, but I hope you understand where I'm trying to go with it.
Yeah, I'm trying at least. So trying to understand. Uh, I think, we have two ways dealing with this among the Muslims. There is one saying, oh, you know what is said by the people who are really pessimistic about the future is that they are saying is going to be, there is no way, there is no solution. So we need to be more optimistic with Muslims and to bring them to an understanding that no, it's not as bad as this. On the other side, as you said, we have Muslims saying, "Oh, we don't care. At the end of the day, it's God's decision, and there is uh, the end of the world, and the end of the world is coming. So whatever we do, it's going to happen." I think that both are wrong. Both. So trying to be more positive, I don't think that this is the way. Trying to say because it's going to happen, we have nothing to do is not going to it's not the way. I think that we have to come back to the relation and to understanding of what is or what are our duties and responsibilities in the world. Yes, Allah and God is telling us, not only in the Quran, but in all the previous revelations, you are going to add negatively, you are going to destroy the world, and this is going to happen. You have two things in the Quran bringing this idea: the angels from the very beginning, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ, are going to put on earth someone who is going to spread corruption and bloodshed on the earth. This is the very understanding of the angels, knowing who are the human beings that are going to be created. So they are going to destroy the world and to spread bloodshed, which is what we are seeing today. And we have seen this through history. And وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, by the time the men are human beings and humanity is going to uh, destruction or to a
Mm.
regression. Uh, uh, so we have this. This is our understanding. Knowing this, knowing that people are going to destroy the world, humanity is going to destroy the world. So it was brought to us, given to us in a way which was pure and in order, uh, in a way that it was as we had with our heart. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. That only the people who are coming to God with a salim, which is not perverted, a sound heart, which means here not perverted, so the original state. So we know that human being and humanity is going to do this. Having said that, at the when we look at our time, if you come to the people and say, you know what, as Muslims, we have to be positive, it's going to end better, it's going to be better. I have no idea about this. And all the Quran is telling me, maybe
Mm.
not. It's not going to be better. Now, having said this, is there a way to address the Muslims in a way where they understand what they have to do? From the very beginning, and we have this from the first Muslim scholars and the first Muslim thinkers, that yes, it's going, it's, you look at what the scholars were talking about when they're talking about umum al-balwa. Umum al-balwa is what, when you are in a society where around you it's just corruption and negativity, you have to deal with al-Quran and with the fiqh in a way where you can find your way, your path to all this corruption. So this was in the ninth
Mm.
century. So a long time ago, they were even dealing with this and asking, oh, can we be positive? No, عموم البلوى, I mean, it's just corrupt. You are in corrupt society. And many scholars, even, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, leaving his society, saying, I need to go through a self-purification. He left for 10 years. Just, I don't want students. I don't want to teach. I need to purify
Mm.
myself. Okay, that's fine. Having said that, if you come back to our time and say, how can we do this? The first is to understand the very truth that the world is going to be corrupt, that humanity is going to destroy the world. The very truth. And this is a truth. This is something that was predicted by the angels and known in the Quran and known in the Bible and known in the Torah and known even by the Hindus, where they were talking about, cycles and stages and ages. And you go from the golden age to the age of the dark
Mm.
age. So you have all this. We know this. So now, what is our responsibility? To try to be positive or to try to say, oh, because it's the reality, we have nothing to do, just go with the move. No. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So this is what you have to understand. Whatever the corrupt world, whatever the situation, your responsibility is to resist this negative movement, this regression and this corruption. So this is something which is our understanding. And this is why I was telling you about the Native American legend saying, do your
Mm.
part. you are not going to be asked about the results. You are going to be asked about your intention and your action and your trust. And this is the very meaning of it. So don't look at the world and this corrupt world to justify your passivity. Look at yourself to help us to understand your actions. So are you trying at your level to do your best, which is, again, we come back to what we were talking about, the local initiatives and what we have to do at our level with our own self and with our families and with our neighborhood and the local level. But I wouldn't try to have a misleading
Mm.
positive discourse about the world, because what I see is not
Yeah.
what my assessment of the situation. What I got from the spiritual revelations, and the revelations was contrary to what the West is saying. It's not a progress, it's a
Mm.
regression. What was good is behind, and we are not going towards the highest spiritual level. Having said this, in this trend, I understand my responsibility as a human being to resist, which is the very meaning of jihad, to resist and to reform, to do my best for the world to be better. Is it going a global better? Capitalistically speaking, no, because the quantity of bad is huge compared to the small drop of good that I'm bringing to the world. But as John Paul II said, if one human being is less suffering in the world, so the world is better from a spiritual
Mm.
perspective. So the world is better if you just cure or help one human being. That's enough. So I think that we have to get the spiritual resistance versus this negative, uh, uh, objective vision on the world, and we have to do our best. And it's a question of doing what we have to
Yeah.
do.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khairan, dear Professor. I think that's a beautiful note to end our conversation. I think we've what I liked about the conversation is that we did not really have to use the words climate or environmentalism, right? It was really, and I think that's also what makes Islam so strong, is that our solution to the crises we see around us is not a new movement or a separate movement, but it's to come back to our teachings at the
Yes,
core
it's a
of Islam.
reconciliation. Exactly. Yeah, it's a reconciliation. We have to reconcile ourselves with our principles to get the very meaning of what we are
Yeah.
dealing with. So this is why I called it an ecology before ecology.
Yeah. I look forward when's the new book coming out?
I don't. No, it's not available. I'm going to teach it for the first time. I'm going to teach it
Mhm.
first to the public on YouTube. Try to see how the people react, and then I will
Insha-
publish. And I might try to do it even in English. Why not? It could be interesting to have it also taught in English before being
Yeah.
published.
Well, I would love
I have
that.
to think,
I would love that.
inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan for your time.